Michael Bloomberg, welcome to the arena.
Bloomberg was awful.
They tore the skin off him.
This was a disaster for Bloomberg.
It was hard to watch.
He was tone deaf on issue after issue.
Even when Warren was hitting him, he was watching the fist hit his face.
I don't think any Democrat is looking at that and going, that's the guy who's going to save us against Trump in November.
Last night was the Nevada Democratic debate, and I'm going to break down exactly how Michael Bloomberg got wrecked. Now, I will say this is going to be most of the breakdown is Michael Bloomberg getting destroyed. During my live stream tomorrow on Friday, I will be maybe showing more clips, including Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg going at it at times. But I think it's important here to focus on Michael Bloomberg because he was a newcomer to this stage. So far, the only way anybody even knows of Bloomberg is through his campaign ads. He's blanketing the airwaves, whether it's television, radio, the internet, with his campaign ads that are self-funded through his $50 billion. I think it's almost $60 billion at this point. I mean, it is just crazy how much money this man has and his attempt right now to purchase the nomination for himself. The DNC changed the rules so that he could be on the debate stage, and they wouldn't change those rules for anybody else, wouldn't change it for Julian Castro, wouldn't change it for Cory Booker, wouldn't change it for Tulsi Gabbard, nobody else. Changed it for Michael Bloomberg so he could be on the debate stage, but it backfired. So, I'm going to show you here how it backfired, but before I do that, this was the most watched debate, as Mediaite reports here, NBC Democratic debate, most watched in history with about 20 million viewers. So about 20 million people saw Michael Bloomberg get wrecked. This should have an impact on his poll numbers right now. So even though Bernie Sanders is in a strong first nationally, and in most states he's also in first, Bloomberg has been rising. Right now he's sitting about fourth, third, second, depending on the state, depending on the poll. And it's purely because of the ads that he's putting all over the airwaves. But now people actually got to see Michael Bloomberg get challenged on his horrible record. I mean, from whether it's policy, whether it's him, endorsing George Bush, whether it's him giving money to Republicans, him being for cutting Social Security, Medicare. I mean, go down the list. So let me start here with how the debate started. And that's Bernie Sanders getting the first shot in at Michael Bloomberg.
In order to beat Donald Trump, we're going to need the largest voter turnout in the history of the United States. Mr. Bloomberg had policies in New York City of stop and frisk, which went after African American and Latino people in an outrageous way. That is not a way you're going to grow voter turnout. What our movement is about is bringing working class people together, Black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, around an agenda that works for all of us and not just the billionaire class. And that agenda says that maybe, just maybe, we should join the rest of the industrialized world, guarantee health care to all people as a human right, raise that minimum wage to a living wage of $15 an hour, and have the guts to take on the fossil fuel industry because their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet and the need to combat climate change. Those are some of the reasons we have the strongest campaign to defeat Donald Trump.
All right, so this was a great opening because I've talked over and over again about Bernie Sanders and his electability. He is the most electable candidate because of the reasons he points out. He turns out young people, independents, working class people. These are the voters that did not vote in 2016. You need these people out in 2020. The people that voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 are largely blue no matter who voters. So they're going to vote for the Democratic nominee regardless. So the people you have to win over are the people that did not come out in 2016. And those are the voters that Bernie Sanders speaks to. So that is how you win. And Michael Bloomberg's history of stop and frisk, which we'll get into a little more later, he will suppress the vote. I mean, young people aren't going to come out. I'm telling you right now, if Bloomberg somehow becomes the nominee, whether he somehow gets the most votes or whether he buys the nomination, I'm telling you right now, I will encourage people not to vote. Because at that point, what's the point? I mean, honestly, what is the point? At that point, the focus has to be purely on activism, has to be purely on doing everything else. But the Democratic Party at that point would be dead. Now, let's get to Elizabeth Warren here. She had a great debate. I mean, look, I'm a Sanders supporter, but Warren here had a great performance during this debate, though, as I discussed in my other video, her answer when it comes to the convention and overturning the will of the people, just horrible and, in my opinion, disqualifying. But with that said, her performance and her fight here against Bloomberg was fantastic. Let's start with the first clip here.
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. Democrats are not going to win if we have a nominee who has a history of hiding his tax returns, of harassing women, and of supporting racist policies like redlining and stop and frisk. Look, I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but understand this. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another. This country has worked for the rich for a long time and left everyone else in the dirt. It is time to have a president who will be on the side of working families and be willing to get out there and fight for them. That is why I am in this race, and that is how I will beat Donald Trump.
That was just all great. That opening line, I mean, clearly a lot of this is planned and rehearsed, but what's actually impressive about Warren's performance during this debate anyways, she hasn't really shown this in other debates, but in this debate, she didn't appear to be rehearsed or didn't like, all of this appeared to be organic, the way she presented it, the way she performed it, which is why I think she had a fantastic performance in this debate, because clearly she did. As I was saying, that opening line where you think she's maybe talking about Donald Trump, but she's actually talking about Michael Bloomberg. Perfect. Just perfect. Calling him or saying we can't replace one arrogant billionaire for another arrogant billionaire. All these lines, just solid. Now let's get to the next clip here. This is more Warren, and this is discussing Bloomberg and stop and frisk.
If I go back and look at my time in office, the one thing that I'm really worried about, embarrassed about, was how it turned out with stop and frisk.
When the mayor says that he apologized, listen very closely to the apology. The language he used is about stop and frisk. It's about how it turned out. Now, this isn't about how it turned out. This is about what it was designed to do to begin with. It targeted communities of color. It targeted black and brown men from the beginning. And if you want to issue a real apology, then the apology has to start with the intent of the plan as it was put together and the willful ignorance day by day by day of admitting what was happening, even as people protested in your own street, shutting out the sounds of people telling you how your own policy was breaking their lives. You need a different apology.
Senator,
here,
thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
Chuck?
So another great moment here for Elizabeth Warren, but even before that, Michael Bloomberg ended himself. He was not prepared for any of the questions from the moderators, any of the pushback from any of the candidates on stage. It looks like he didn't prepare at all. So, like, imagine him against Donald Trump. He would get destroyed. Like, it's cute how he's trying to put out, these tweets that are attacking Donald Trump, all written by his employees, but he would get destroyed. Bloomberg himself on the debate stage would get destroyed, as he got destroyed here. So this, like, the idea that he would be a good candidate against Trump just blows my mind. I mean, there was no rationale to it whatsoever. And his defense here, it's really disappointing how stop and frisk turned out. You were the mayor. It was your policy. You were in control. So either it was your idea, the way you implemented it, the way it ended up was all you, or you are a crappy leader and you lost complete control over your own damn city. So which one is it? And we know from leaked tapes which one it was. This was his plan. His intention was targeting minorities. That was his intention. Tape after tape after tape. He is discussing this, acting like it's no big deal. So Michael Bloomberg, again, you suppress the base. People of color, especially young people, not coming out. for Michael Bloomberg. You lose against Donald Trump simply through that. Next clip here goes into non-disclosure agreements and the workplace harassment that happened in Michael Bloomberg's organization.
Several former employees have claimed that your company was a hostile workplace for women. When you were confronted about it, you admitted making sexually suggestive remarks, saying, quote, "That's the way I grew up." In a lawsuit in the 1990s, according to the Washington Post, one former female employee alleged that you said, quote, "I would do you in a second." Should Democrats expect better from their nominee?
Let me say a couple things, and if I can have my full minute and a quarter, thank you. I have no tolerance for the kind of behavior that the Me Too movement has exposed.
So, Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements so we can hear their side of the story?
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
Let me
that?
finish.
How many is that?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like the joke I told. And let me put, there's agreements between two parties that wanted to keep it quiet, and that's up to them. They signed those agreements, and we'll live with it.
So wait, when you say it is up to, I just want to be clear. Some is how many? And when you say they signed them and they wanted them, if they wish now to speak out and tell their side of the story about what it is they allege, that's now okay with you? You're releasing them on television tonight?
Senator? No.
Is that right?
Senator?
Tonight?
Senator, the company and somebody else, in this case, a man or a woman, or could be more than that, they decided when they made an agreement that they wanted to keep it quiet for everybody's interest. They signed the agreements, and that's what we're going to live with.
I'm sorry. No, the question is, are the women bound by being muzzled by you? And you could release them from that immediately, because understand, this is not just a question of the mayor's character. This is also a question about electability. We are not going to beat Donald Trump with a man who has who knows how many non-disclosure agreements and the drip, drip, drip of stories of women saying they have been harassed and discriminated against. That's not what we do as Democrats.
Mr. Vice President.
All the mayor has to do is say, you are released from the non-disclosure agreement, period. This is about transparency from the very beginning, whether it's your health record, whether it's your taxes, whether you have cases against you, whether or not people have signed non-disclosure agreements. You think that women, in fact, were ready to say, I don't want anybody to know about what you did to me? That's not how it works. The way it works is they say, look, this is what you did to me, and the mayor comes along and his attorney says, I will give you this amount of money if you promise you'll never say anything. That's how it works.
Mayor
All right. Even Joe Biden, got solid shots in on Michael Bloomberg here. And really, just like the last clip, it's the end starts with the beginning. Michael Bloomberg's own words appearing incredibly weak. Oh, can I have my minute and a quarter, please? Please, I'll need my minute and a quarter to speak. Like he's weak. He's a weak man. He's weak. He doesn't appear like he has his crap together. He clearly did not prepare at all. Or if he did prepare, I mean, here's the thing. So I watched some commentary afterwards from CNN. Apparently, Bloomberg did prepare. So this is Bloomberg prepared for a debate. Like, forget about it. Forget about it. Absolutely destroy. And it's not even just about the debates. It's about what's in your past, what Donald Trump can use in commercials, whether it's stop and frisk, whether it's Bloomberg endorsing George Bush, whether it's Bloomberg giving money to Republicans, whether it's Bloomberg saying he doesn't believe in the minimum wage. I mean, clip after clip after clip after clip. This is how you suppress the Democratic base. Again, there's no worry about Trump winning Democrats over. It's about suppressing the Democratic base. Everything I just mentioned there, put into a commercial, will suppress the Democratic base, and a Bloomberg candidacy would lose to Donald Trump easily. Now, let me get what's next here. So, as I was talking about Republicans and Bush, Bernie Sanders now brings this up during the debate.
You know, we talk about electability, and everybody up here wants to beat Trump. And we talked about stop and frisk, and we talked about the workplace that Mayor Bloomberg has established and the problems there. But maybe we should also ask how Mayor Bloomberg in 2004 supported George W. Bush for president, put money into Republican candidates for the United States Senate when some of us, Joe and I and others, were fighting for Democrats to control the United States Senate. And maybe we can talk about a billionaire saying that we should not raise the minimum wage, or that we should cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If that's a way to beat Donald Trump, wow, I would be very surprised.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, so a lot of these clips really speak for themselves. Because this was a debate really where there was action the whole time, which is why it was hard for me to chop this down any shorter than I have it. Because, and what I've cut down, I've already cut out a ton of clips that I wish I could have used. Because almost every moment was a highlight reel moment. And here is another one. Bernie bringing up Bloomberg endorsing Bush, Bloomberg giving money to Republicans, Bloomberg being against the minimum wage. Again, all these things suppressing the Democratic vote. Like, Bloomberg is a Republican and a horrible candidate. You're not going to win the nomination, or you're not going to win, the nomination unless you buy it. But you're definitely not going to win the presidency just being Republican light. That's how Democrats stay home. I mean, like, we thought Hillary Clinton was bad. We thought Joe Biden was bad. Bloomberg is next level. Let's get to another clip here with Bernie hitting Bloomberg on the tax code.
You know, when we talk about a corrupt political system bought by billionaires like Mr. Bloomberg, it manifests itself in a tax code in which not only is Amazon and many other major corporations, some owned by the wealthiest people in this country, not paying a nickel in taxes, we have the insane situation that billionaires today, if you can believe it, have an effective tax rate lower than the middle class.
Senator,
so maybe
you're
just
the tax code. Why are you complaining?
What?
Who wrote the code?
You did. You and your campaign.
99
you and your camp, not me. You and your campaign contributions electing people who represent the wealthy and the powerful.
Yes,
those are the folks.
Democrats. Thank you.
Well, and Republicans too.
Okay.
And George W. Bush as well.
All right. There's actually a lot to that clip. Basically, Michael Bloomberg here is incredibly smug and disconnected. He thinks that because he mentions, Democrats wrote the code, so you better stop attacking the tax code because Democrats wrote. Does Michael Bloomberg know anything about what Bernie Sanders has been fighting against his entire career, let alone the past 4 or 5 years? He's been fighting the Democratic establishment. He's been fighting the fact that many Democrats are bought by people like Michael Bloomberg, by billionaires or corporations that have special interests, that have certain interests in certain areas, including especially the tax code. And they are the ones that dictate policy because of those campaign contributions. Like, does Michael Bloomberg really think he can get away with this by just saying, you wrote the code, and Democrats, I gave to Democrats? Like, do you know who Bernie Sanders is? Bernie Sanders is a lifelong independent, has fought the establishment of both parties, including as well the corporate establishment, the media establishment. He's been on the side of people his entire career. Bernie Sanders is not the one dictating the tax code because he's one person. There are other senators. The vast majority of senators and Congress people are bought by special interests. That's what Bernie Sanders is trying to change. And I mean, Bloomberg, he's been pictured with Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump. You're not seeing the average Joe, like some random dude who's making 40 grand a year. That person's not being pictured with all these presidents. It's Michael Bloomberg because Michael Bloomberg has a direct connection to policy. That's the point here. All right. I think I got 2 more clips. This next one, again, Bernie Sanders going after Bloomberg on wealth.
We have a grotesque and immoral distribution of wealth and income. Mike Bloomberg owns more wealth than the bottom 125 million Americans. That's wrong. That's immoral. That should not be the case when we got 500,000 people sleeping out on the street, when we have kids who cannot afford to go to college, when we have 45 million people dealing with student debt. We have enormous problems facing this country, and we cannot continue seeing a situation where in the last 3 years, billionaires in this country saw an $850 billion increase in their wealth. Congratulations, Mr. Bloomberg. But the average American last year saw less than a 1% increase in his or her income. That's wrong.
Mayor Bloomberg, should you exist?
I can't speak for all billionaires. All I know is I've been very lucky, made a lot of money, and I'm giving it all away to make this country better. And a good chunk of it goes to the Democratic Party as well.
Is it too much? Have you earned too much money? Has it been an obscene amount of? Should you have earned that much money?
Yes. I worked very hard for it, and I'm giving it away.
Unbelievable. I wish the question they actually asked him was, Michael Bloomberg, do you think you've worked 50 billion times harder than anybody else in the country? Do you think you've worked 50 billion times harder to earn the money that you have? Because of course he hasn't. The system is rigged against the average person. Nobody earns $50 billion. You don't even earn $1 billion. It is an obscene amount of wealth when there are people homeless, when there are people that can't afford health care, when there are people that are trying to pay off tuition, can't afford housing, can't afford food. It's crazy. Michael Bloomberg has that money because he's lucky. Born into the right family, born at the right place, the right time, had the right opportunities, was able to make that wealth. Most people don't have that. Now, of course, yes, it involves, leaving your home and working sometimes. But there are people out there that work 2 or 3 jobs that 100% work 80, 100, 1,000 times harder than Michael Bloomberg does, and they don't even make a tiny fraction of the money that he has. So this is a systemic issue. And if Bloomberg actually had an issue with it, first, he wouldn't be making this kind of money. But at the same time, he would be trying to change it. He'd be fighting to change it. He'd be working as hard as Bernie Sanders is, if not harder, to change it because he would know himself how rigged the game is. But Bloomberg is for the status quo. He doesn't want his taxes raised. He loves how the whole system works because it's benefited him. I mean, he's not even, I don't have the clip here, I don't think, but he's not even for the wealth tax. Not even Warren's wealth tax, which is less than Bernie's, but Warren's wealth tax is it's 2 cents. 2 cents on every dollar over $50 million. That's pennies, literally. That is literally pennies, and he's not for that. It shows you how greedy and out of touch he is. And again, how unelectable he is. Last clip here. This is Bernie discussing his policy to put workers on corporate boards, and watch the clip.
Thank you. It is my policy, and I'm very proud of that policy. All right? What we need to do to deal with this grotesque level of income and wealth inequality is make sure that those people who are working, you know what, Mr. Bloomberg, it wasn't you who made all that money. Maybe your workers played some role in that as well. And it is important that those workers are able to share the benefits. Also, when we have so many people who go to work every day and they feel not good about their jobs. They feel like cogs in a machine. I want workers to be able to sit on corporate boards as well so they can have some say over what happens to their lives.
Mayor Bloomberg, you own a large company. Would you support what Senator Sanders is proposing?
Absolutely not. I can't think of ways that would make it easier for Donald Trump to get reelected than listening to this conversation. It's ridiculous. We're not going to throw out capitalism. We tried that. Other countries tried that. It was called communism, and it just didn't work.
All right. Look how much contempt he has for working people. He can't even fathom the idea that workers should be on corporate boards because they also help to amass the wealth that these executives make. It is just disgusting. And even the room, I mean, you saw this consistently throughout the debate. When Michael Bloomberg tried to land a line like he did there with communism, the room didn't like it because they know these are conservative attacks. These are right-wing BS attacks. You have a Republican on stage here, a billionaire Republican trying to win the Democratic nomination. Now, let me just give a quick overview here of the winners and losers. So I think Elizabeth Warren had her best debate out of any debate, easily. I think she had her best performance, definitely. I will say, as I said earlier, her response on what should happen at the convention, I think, is disqualifying. She should have outright said the person with the most votes and the most pledged delegates at the convention should be the nominee. She didn't say that. I think it's disqualifying. But apart from that, she had a great debate because she went after Bloomberg. So you're going to hit Bloomberg as hard as she does, you're going to have a great debate. So even though Bloomberg may be an easy target because there was so much to go after, she did a great job going after him. The one more point on Warren, she also had some lines trying to attack Bernie Sanders. They just fell flat. Maybe I'll show it in a future on Friday during the live stream, but largely it was not. They just didn't work, because the thing with attacking Sanders, you actually need something of substance to attack him with. There's nothing there. So it's really hard for anybody to attack Bernie Sanders when there really isn't any substance to work with. But speaking of Bernie Sanders, he had a solid night. I think he clearly is the most consistent candidate in all these debates. I don't think he's really had any bad debates. There are debates where I wish he's been a little more lively in. The very first debate, I wish he was a little more lively. That's the one that Kamala Harris won, in terms of, again, performance. But apart from that, he's been consistent in all these debates, always has a consistent message, always has a consistent fight, always fighting for people, fighting for Medicare for all, fighting for free public college, fighting for canceling student debt, basically fighting for working people in general, of all races, all backgrounds, whatever. Like, he's the only one on stage that I know actually cares about people because of his record. So, like, it was a great debate for him. And I was seeing the response from the press, from the media, CNN. Pundits were saying that Bernie won this debate. Morning Joe Scarborough said Bernie won this debate. So he apparently even had a positive impression on the media at large, which is rare when it comes to how the media feels about Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden, not bad. Like, I mean, Joe Biden, had many of his moments where he, fumbled mid-sentence or didn't know what he was talking about, or what he was saying wasn't making any sense. And again, his platform is not good, but and his policy record is not good. His history is not good. His votes aren't good, but he landed some solid shots on Bloomberg, and that's worth something. I mean, when he went after Bloomberg, those moments actually landed, and he landed them, not just because he was going after Bloomberg, but because Biden actually landed the lines, and it was effective. So I put Joe Biden in the middle of the pack here. Buttigieg, I didn't even show him. He's largely forgettable in this whole debate, but the only reason I don't put him last or second last is because Amy Klobuchar and Bloomberg did worse. So Amy Klobuchar also kind of got ripped apart. Elizabeth Warren actually attacked her a few times. Pete Buttigieg went after her over forgetting the president of Mexico. Klobuchar did not have a good debate. It was not good. But she isn't last on this list because Michael Bloomberg was in this debate. And Michael Bloomberg, as you saw, got torn apart. He was weak, ineffective, smug, out of touch, just didn't have it, unprepared. So because 20 million people saw this debate, I hope it's going to have a real impact on his poll numbers. This was the real first introduction that voters had to Michael Bloomberg. And I don't know how you come away from this debate thinking Michael Bloomberg would be a good candidate against Donald Trump. Donald Trump would tear him to shreds. So hopefully people wake up. And I think, apart from performance-wise, I think Bernie Sanders likely had the winning night here because he was the front runner. He wasn't really attacked all that much. And when he was attacked, the attacks landed flat, again, because there isn't much to actually attack Sanders on. So he comes away with this debate, I think, the winner. In terms of performance-wise, though, I think Warren had the best performance, but Bernie actually comes away with this with the momentum that is continuing to lift him in polling and in these various upcoming states. So Warren, Sanders are the winners. Bloomberg, the big loser. And we got to see what happens with Bloomberg from now. from now on. He's going to continue pouring more money into this race, more money into ads. We all know that's going to go on. But maybe, just maybe, these clips, this debate had a bit of an effect on Michael Bloomberg and his support.